spring, and it's a special focus, okay? So kind of ties into the other lessons, but not so much. It's actually a prequel to Pastor's sermon last week. He preached from Joshua 5, and our lesson is Joshua 4, okay? So we just celebrated Memorial Day, which we know is a day to remember those that, died in service to save our country or protect our country. We don't forget them. We don't want to forget them, but we also can't forget that God has what he's done for our ultimate freedom, right? And so memorials, they help us remember. So our lesson today comes from Joshua 4, verses 1 through 7, and verses 20 through 24. Okay? So guys, remember Joshua, he was the mentee of Moses, right? And so when Moses died, that's when Joshua was then appointed to step up and lead the children of Israel. So it kind of looked like this as far as the timeline. So Moses dies, Israel weeps for 30 days for Moses, and then God tells him, look, my servant Moses is dead. It's your turn now, right? So God appoints him, and the people in time, they accept him. They accept his leadership. And so in chapter 3 of Joshua, God brought Joshua across, in chapter 4. No, yes, in chapter 3, sorry. So he's bringing them across the Jordan River. This is the last big thing they have to do to get to the promised land, okay? Remember, it's been 40 years. They've been waiting for this. And so finally, God, he brings them across just the same way as he brought Moses through the Red Sea. So, and we'll talk more about this in a moment. So our lesson teaches us why it's important to remember God's faithfulness. The first part of the lesson teaches us that God calls us to remember. This is Joshua 4, verses 1 through 3, okay? So Joshua, as soon as he took over and he knew the next step was the promised land, he sent spies over. Remember, Joshua, he was one of the original spies that went to Canaan to see what was going on there. So now he's in charge, and he's sending spies to see what's going on in the promised land. And so when he gets over there, the spies come back, and they have a good report. They're like, look, the people over there, they scared. They panicking because of us. They know this is our land, right? So now Joshua, he knows, okay, this is go time. And so God, what he tells Joshua is that he is going to exalt him before all of Israel so that they can see that he is the new leader, right? And so that's what happens. They walk across. This is what he says. God tells Joshua to send the priest across with the Ark of the Covenant, and as soon as they step foot into the Jordan, it's going to split. And it did, right? So now what happens is the priest, and they take the Ark of the Covenant, they stand in the middle of the Jordan, it's split, and they stand there for the duration of this time while all the people pass through the Jordan on dry land, right? This is good news, guys, right? So, and we'll talk about this verse more in a moment, but as they go past, as soon as they get past, God is like, okay, we gotta set up a memorial. Y'all gotta remember this, right? And I love this, guys. Throughout all of the Bible, it talks about remembrance, right? Even when we take, we got it right here. Oh, no, we don't. We ain't got that no more. Okay, but y'all know what I'm talking about, right? When we take communion, right, it says we take this in remembrance of Christ, right? And so remembering is important to the life of a Christian, right? And I love, again, the timing of it. He's saying, you're going to stop right here to remember. Because guess what? When we start doing too much, we start thinking it's us. We forget that it was God who did it, right? So he said, before y'all take another step, y'all gonna stop right here and y'all are gonna remember, right? So what is it that we need to remember, right? That's a question for us. We don't have to answer it, but answer it for yourself. And that's how we're gonna end it as well. What is it that we need to remember that God has brought us through, right? So for me, when me and Layla's dad separated, I was scared to death. Right? I was grieving. I had to go back to therapy because I didn't know how I was going to be a single parent. It scared me to death. I was like, I don't know what to do with this child, right? I can't give her back. So I went to therapy, and my therapist told me something profound but very simple. He said, write a list of all of your accomplishments, and we'll talk next week. And I did. And he said, you mean to tell me you did all of those things, but you can't do this? Right? It was to remind me that I could do it. Right? Now, I don't know if he was a Christian or not, but for me, it reminded me of all of the obstacles and achievements that God brought me through. So, of course I could do this. With God's help, I could do anything. And so he said, okay, I need y'all to remember this. So he wanted them to stop before they got too high and mighty, didn't want them to get the big head. So this is where our lesson starts in verse 1. It says, after the entire nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord spoke to Joshua. Okay, so guys, I wanted us to put a pin in this because remember, even though all of the children of Israel, they've been with God for a minute, right? He spoke to the leader to tell them what to do, right? Our deliverance is sometimes tied up into our leader. And if we don't listen to them, we don't know what to do next, right? And so he tells the leader, Joshua, what to do next. Verse 2, he says, choose 12 men from the people, 1 man from each tribe. Verse 3, and command them, take 12 stones from this place in the middle of the Jordan where the priests are standing, carry them with you, and set them down at the place where you spend the night. So there's significance in all of this, guys. The reason why he says have one representative from each tribe, because that symbolizes unity of the 12 tribes of Israel, right? Now, we know that they didn't spend some time fighting, right? But here, they are unified. And this is also a snippet of a lesson here that each tribe had to send a representative. This was a lesson to me that everyone isn't called to do everything, right? God could have easily said, look, as the people are traveling through this dry land, have them grab a stone and take it with them. No, it was a representative, okay? So the representatives went straight to the middle of the Jordan where the priests were standing, because remember, the Ark of the Covenant, that was a symbol of God's presence, right? And so that's where they got the stones from. So, and these stones we know were meant to be a memorial. This is not the first time they used stones in the Bible as a memorial. It was very big in the Old Testament. A theologian said it this way: memorials were intended to provoke questioning so God's story could be told over and over. So when the idea is that when kids, people from future generations see these stones stacked up, they say, what in the world is this? And that will prompt the believers to say, let me tell you a story about God. Right? And so we'll talk more so about what our memorials are. So the second thing the lesson wants to teach us is that memorials help us remember. This is in Joshua 4, verses 4 through 7. So verses 4 and 5 say, so Joshua summoned the 12 men he had selected from the Israelites, 1 man from each tribe, and said to them, go across to the ark of the Lord, your God, in the middle of the Jordan. Each of you lift a stone unto your shoulder, 1 for each of the Israelite tribes, right? So, guys, we know that these were not little stones, right? They were like boulders, kind of, but they were able to carry them. Again, guys, the symbolism. We're not going to put some little pebbles that the wind can blow away, right? They put these big stones. And so Joshua, of course, 4 and 5 let us know that he obeyed what God told him to do. All of them getting a stone, again, that was a symbol of unity among the tribes. And these were special stones because, think about it, they were getting them from the bottom of the Jordan. These stones have never seen the light of day, right? So anytime the children of Israel see this, they know these are special because they was buried under all that water. The same water that God allowed us to go across on dry land, right? So verse 6 says this. And this is a continuation, so that this will be a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask you, what do these stones mean to you? And we'll stop for a minute right there. So, guys, again, these things were a sign. They were a sign of God's faithfulness and his greatness. This is the second time he done parted a body of water so his people can get across. This was a sign. So anytime we see these stones, we know where they came from. Right? Anybody else might be able to walk past that, but as believers, guys, we have to honor memorials because they're a reminder to us, and they're also a great teaching tool to the future generations of what God has done. And so when he says, so when your children ask, what are these stones, guys, that is because we are supposed to be passing down God's greatness to future generations. What are we passing? Do your children know your testimony? Right? That's a part of a memorial, right? This is a reminder to them about who God is, or a lesson to them. What do they know? What are we passing? The reason why most future generations fail is because they haven't been taught about God's goodness. And that means that we have failed them, right? And that's why it says that they're weak. So guys, memorials is several reasons that they're necessary. 1, because God's people forget what they should remember. I don't know what it is about human nature, but it seems that the horrible things, we remember those. We can recall all of those. But the good things, those are a little bit harder to recall. And that's why when we're stuck or struggling, we stay there sometimes because we forget that God has already delivered us from something worse than this. Right? And I don't know if I know it's the enemy that makes us recall every bad thing because he wants us to stay stuck in those holes. But memorials are sometimes visual reminders that we don't have to be stuck because our God is too good. Right? Another reason why they're necessary is because what God has done should not diminish over time. Right? Those same stones should still be right there. Right? And they still should be a lesson about what God has done. Right? We cannot, the reason why God's, the things he's done diminishes is when we don't pass it along. Again, what are we sharing? We give a whole bunch of traditions and stuff to our kids. Most of them, they can't even use them. Pastor uses the example all the time of cutting a pot roast. And by the time you done cut it all up, you don't even know why you cut it. Right? That's not going to get us into heaven. Right? What are we passing along about God? Memorials are also necessary because they teach children. Right? They are a lesson to children. The memorial of 9/11, when kids go there, they're able to learn about what happened. They're able to learn about the culture. They're able to learn about what prompted the war. Right? It's a lesson. And then lastly, memorials are necessary because they're helpful in time of crisis. When I'm in trouble, I need to remember how good God is. And it's crazy because you wouldn't think a Christian needs that type of reminder, but yeah, we do. We do, right? Because we forget. And the enemy, he's crafty in that way to try to make us forget. But it's up to us to remember that in times of crisis, God is still good. He's faithful even when I don't deserve it. He's gotten me out of rough scrapes than this, right? So memorials, another point about them is that they can be visible or unseen, right? A perfect example, of course, of the visible one is the stones, right? As soon as I thought about the unseen, I thought about Jacob and his wrestling with the angel, and now he got a limp. We can't see the scars, but we can see that limp, right? That's a memorial or a testament to God's grace and his goodness. So, guys, I ask you again, what does your children and grandchildren know about God from you? And if you can't answer that, then we got work to do. That's all. It's not a judgment. It just means that we have more work to do. Verse 7 says, and Joshua continues, you should tell them the water of the Jordan was cut off in front of the ark of the Lord's covenant. When it crossed the Jordan's water was cut off. Therefore, these stones will always be a memorial for the Israelites. In other words, he's explaining to them, tell your children what happened. Don't just tell them it's rocks and God is good. Explain the story, right? Guys, sometimes we leave the story off because we don't want to be vulnerable. We're scared to be judged, right? Tell them your story. The reason why young adults and youth are struggling so much now, especially with church folks, is because we pretend we're so perfect that they can't come to us about things, and they don't even know how to get through things because we just show them the good part. We got to show them the ugly too. It's some rivers that we had to cross, that God had to deliver us through, right? It's some stuff that we had to do and couldn't do it without God. We have to be vulnerable to show people the ugly side too, or else they'll never know how to get through it. So we have to make sure we let them know what happened. And now the last part of the lesson teaches us to remember God's faithfulness and his power, okay? So the lesson cuts off verses 8 through 19, but basically what it is God telling Joshua that he was exalted that day. All the people crossed. They got the stones like God said. And then once everybody crossed through, the priest then, took the Ark of the Covenant, and they also crossed the Jordan. And the water returned back to where it was, okay? Verse 20 says, then Joshua set up in Gilgal the 12 stones they had taken from the Jordan, right? So this is the memorial now being built up. And the importance of Gilgal, guys, is that this became Israel's base of operations when it came time to take Canaan, right? When they started planning out the war strategies and listening to God, they were meeting in Gilgal. So what a perfect place to have this memorial. Anytime they think they're going to lose, they got this memorial to say, no, God is going to help us win. Right? So this is where their memorial was. Verses 21 and 22 says, and he said to the Israelites, in the future, when your children ask their fathers, what is the meaning of these stones? You should tell your children, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. Right? Could you imagine a kid looking at the Jordan where people still get baptized, and you tell them, no, it wasn't all water, because God split it open so that they can walk on dry ground. Right? Could you imagine? I mean, guys, I'm working with the kids. You learn that it's so much stuff they don't know. I be giving examples of 9/11. None of them were born then, right? So you got to switch a little stuff up. But teach them. Take time with them. We say the children are the future, and guess what, guys? They are. They are. Most of us will be gone by the time that they're our age. They are the future. What are we teaching them? Right? And Joshua, he keeps reiterating, tell them the story. We crossed the Jordan on dry ground, right? This is what these stones mean. This is important to the future because they need to know that they can trust God for greater. Yeah, we crossed the Red Sea, but God has delivered us from greater since then, right? And it's also teaching them that God's work is bigger and longer than them, right? God ain't new. He ain't nothing new about him. Right? And so the kids need to learn that they can depend on him. Verse 23, the last verse. Well, no, it's not the last verse, sorry. For the Lord your God dried up the water of the Jordan before you until you had crossed over, just as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up before us until we had crossed over. Guys, this is a reminder that God did this not once, but twice. And that means he can keep doing it again and again and again. Right? He is so good. He ain't no one-trick pony, right? Whatever he wants to do, he can do because he is faithful to his people. The last verse says, this is so that all the people of the earth may know that the Lord's hand is strong, and so that you may always fear the Lord your God. Guys, this last verse, it convicts us to evangelize. It's not enough that the children and the future generations know what these memorials are. We're supposed to tell all the people of the earth, because all the people of the earth should know about God's great works, right? Now, our job is to tell them. It's their business if they accept it or not, but it's our job to share it. And memorials help us do that. Why do you think people take so many trips to the Holy Land? Because it's memorials there, right? They're able to learn and accept that if they want, right? And so, guys, I leave you all with this. What are you choosing to remember? And what are you passing down? Amen.